Hello and welcome to another Overlord lore video. This time we will continue the analysis of Pandoras Actor, aka Ainz's son, aka that time my creator was reincarnated as Nito, and how his karma value affects him and other NPCs in general. But before we open Pandora's box, or rather his character sheet, I want to thank my Patreons for supporting this channel. Now, as previously stated, Pandoras Actor is a treasurer by trade and heart. But an aspect I also need to mention is how his karma, his sense of justice, his moral compass so to speak, fits into all of this. For karma alone can be a very assertive and motivating factor, powerful enough to at the very least bend the orders of a supreme being and the intent in which they were given, and we have seen many examples of this. Most prominently were Sebas Tian, despite being instructed to collect intel on the capital city of Ainz, the royal family, and pretty much everything else that might further Nazaric's understanding of the kingdom and the new world in general, an important task that would normally require all of the time and effort of a subordinate. And yet Sebastian found the time to aid, for example, an old lady, and risked conflict with one of the major powers in all of Ainz, just to rescue a thrown-out slave with no special abilities and powers, going so far as to instruct one of his battlemates to use a precious healing scroll to fully restore her health and free her from any illnesses. A scroll of such a high tier that it still can't be reproduced by Demiurge's Happy Farm. This alteration of orders led Demiurge, who abhorred Sebas in much the same way his creator Ooal disliked Touch Me and his good guy attitude, to the conclusion that Sebas might have been under mind control, or indeed had willingly chosen to betray Nazarick, after Solution Epsilon reported on Sebas and his behavior. This led to the dispatchment of an interrogation/kill team in order to deal with the potential traitor, and only the order of a supreme being, quote unquote, made him finally fully submissive again. Another and even more severe example of this would be how Nigredo and Pestonia directly defied the order of a supreme being by preventing Demiurge and his demon from killing the kidnapped children, a deed that earned them both a fitting punishment. And while Albedo called for the heads of both Pestonia and her sister Nigredo for defying the will of the last remaining supreme being, thanks to this very supreme being's mercy, the punishment was transformed into a prison sentence in the frozen prison on the 5th floor, where Nigredo normally lives. So Ainz had given both of them a rather mild sentence, but nonetheless a wise one. A sentence that allowed the Great Tomb to keep the headmate's head attached, and thus one of the strongest healing magic users alive, as well as one of the Tomb's greatest assets, for Nigredo is a vital part of any intel gathering, surveillance, or anti-espionage task, and Albedo knows this. But while Albedo acts like a sweet and demure housewife around Ainz, she is the floor guardian overseer of the tomb, second only to the supreme beings themselves, and her negative karma of 500 means that she is one of the most evil entities in existence. Just as a high karma value of positive 300 led Sebas to at the very least greatly alter and endanger the plans of the last supreme being, Albedo with her negative 500 karma value was solely focused on the harshest punishment possible, in blatant disregard for the wider effects her actions would have on the Great Tomb's general abilities and its war potential. Despite her being the floor guardian overseer and an absolute ace at managing the tomb and all of its greater and minor internal affairs, as well as the Sorcerer Kingdom later on. And I highlighted this misstep because she definitively knows what ill effects her demands for the death of the two would have. Pestonia is the headmate and one of the rare few beings with feeling and resurrection magic, and Nigredo's anti-intelligence abilities are vital, and yet she was willing to sacrifice both of them, because the defiance of Ainz in her mind has to be answered with the harshest and most irrevocable of punishments. Now, irrevocably might not be the correct term to use here, since the Great Tomb of Nazarick could still use its vast reserves of Yggdrasil gold coin in order to resurrect its NPCs, but Albedo didn't suggest that, which means that she indeed intended their sentence to be final. And for the last negative example, despite Demiurge's ruthlessness, he's also not free of this wastefulness himself. For Demiurge, a literal devil in mind, body, dress and deed, of course takes great pleasure in torturing his animals on the happy farm, especially those bipedal sheep that get to see their kids just before they are cut into pieces in order to feed their parents. And while the many humans that suffer on the farm can do preciously little to get actually away, they nonetheless try their absolute best to resist the healing spells. They nonetheless try their absolute best to resist the healing spells that make their skin regrow, so that it can be peeled off their body again, because at this point they want nothing more than the sweet release of death. In a sense, Demiurge really is the most dedicated Harvest Moon player out there. He doesn't build a soulless meat grinder, but a beautifully constructed torture haven, which of course takes a toll on efficiency. Without his resistance, or indeed transforming them into dull, emotionless beings, the farm would be quite a bit more efficient. So if there is any character that embodies the whole humans and of course other outsiders are insects mindset, then it would be Mare, because even the little child that he is could just step on a bug on his way home without thinking about it. And just because the bug is in his way doesn't mean that he will alter his path, since of course the kid wants to be home before 6 PM, like he was told to be. Therefore the thought that the bug has some life or value of its very own never even crossed the mind of the kid. Furthermore, kidnapping Hilma by breaking her leg, and then dragging the crying, frightened and suffering woman away on her hair, was for Mare akin to removing a bug out of his chamber. If he had to break one of its legs in order to get a hold of it, then so be it. No need to think about how the bug feels, because it is just a bug, and Mare is able to ignore the relative minor life of a bug. Or in his case Hilma, because he has a karma value of to him, whatever happens to insects is really none of his concerns. And this right here is probably the mindset of Pandoras Actor, but as the treasurer he in a sense is even more pragmatic and outcome focused than either Demiurge or Albedo. He makes cold, calculated moves, with a blatant disregard for his own personal well-being, or whatever anybody else will think of him for it. And we have seen a rather extreme example of this ruthlessness during the battle against Platinum Dragonlord, where he, while impersonating Ainz himself, went on his knees, begging and sobbing as hard as he could for his very unlife. Not because he values his own life, but because he wanted to see how his enigmatic enemy in front of him would react. Whether or not he will continue with his action mercilessly, as if nothing had happened, whether he will now be extra careful not to kill him in an instant, but instead savor as much of the killing process as possible, dragging it out as long as the frail pile of bones in front of him would allow, or if he hesitates and tells his reasoning and tragic backstory to justify his death to the supposed undead overlord and to an extent, even to himself. But while Pandoras Actor has gotten exactly what he wanted, and what he was supposed to do, gather as much intel as possible, by any means necessary, Demiurge and Albedo were both less than pleased about how Pandoras Actor made Ainz behave in such a shameful manner. The evil pride both of them feel wouldn't allow for such a consideration, and if Demiurge or Albedo were in the same situation, they would probably fight on, or boast that they would rather die than submit to the guy with the reverse fursuit. But of course Ainz approved of this tactic, stating that this would be exactly what he himself would have done. So if we can take anything away from Pandoras Actor's karma value, then it is that he is pragmatic, and that he will do anything to deliver results in the most efficient way possible, no matter who he had to kill or offend in order to get the desired outcome. And with that said, I say thank you very much for watching, and special thanks to Adam J, Al Capone, Andy, Angel of Death, Bad Guy Yee, Boyzilla, Chrissy, Diabetic Centaur, Dystopia, Elika Birchleaf, Phalis Catus, Feral Shivan, Gigafight, Ghost of Epicness, Hector Marino, Black Phoenix Emperor, Hoss, Janabi, Jason, Kleinator, Chromius, Large, Lord Nishikian Rai, Lord Touch Me, Lord Ulbert Elaine Oddle, Luces Ollie, Lexus Fox, Majimar, Mad C, Marcos, Mr. Shoes, Mindless Rev, Minnow 13, Myrtis, Nfiria's Potion, Primus 11, Sasuga Einsama, Sebastian, Shadow Lightning Wolf, Surge, Sparkly Unicorn, the Orc Warboss Rock Ed Smasher, Vash Hawkeye, Zoggo Bane of a Lot, and Zonagon. Thanks guys. Anyway, have a nice day, over and out. Albedo with her negative 500 karma value was solely focused on the harshest punishment possible, which should be dealt to the ambulance that annoys me immediately. Call Neuronest.